Did you know we make more than YouTube videos? It's true. Like this video about an epic fantasy where the world itself basically has genitalia, or this dive into the weird, pseudo-sci-fi fantasy magic of Dune. We even made a whole other video about the topic of this one. It's already up, waiting to be watched. You can see all of them over on Nebula by signing up for the CuriosityStream Nebula Smart Bundle for just $14.79 a year. That's less than $125 a month. Visit curiositystream.com/TaleFoundry and use the code TaleFoundry. When I say the magic of crafting, I want to make it 1,000,000,000% clear what I am not talking about. Crafting magic is not, for instance, taking an existing sword and turning it into a +3 flame sword. It also isn't pulling a demonic battle axe with a bad attitude from the void. Those things are more like enchanting and conjuring, which each probably deserve videos of their own, but I'm talking about the act of creation here, making things. And that is a big topic. There's a lot to say, but I did read a book recently which sort of helped me navigate this idea. It's the first in a series called Circle of Magic by Tamara Pierce, which imagines a world where certain craftspeople are able to tap deeper into the work they do and work wonders as a result of their bond with it. Thinking about the ideas in this book and some of the other takes I've seen on crafting as a form of magic, I think I found 3 pretty interesting approaches to this. The first of them puts the magic front and center. In a lot of stories, we see magic used for crafting, whether to make something ordinary or something extraordinary. Probably the most obvious example of this are gods and other supernatural beings who use their unnatural gifts to make incredible weapons and treasures, most often as gifts. The Irish god of healing, Dian Cecht, made a fully articulated prosthetic arm of silver for the god Nuada when the original was cut off in battle. Hephaestus, Greek god of smithing and craftsmanship, among many other wonders, forged Zeus's lightning bolts. The dwarves of Norse myth made countless marvels, including Thor's hammer Mjolnir. And how many instances are there of gods making living beings, not just magicking them into being, but crafting them out of clay or wood or water? Too many to count. Let's just take it for granted. Supernatural beings can make supernatural things. But it's not always gods and demons and fairies wielding these powers, is it? Inventors and polymaths like the fabled Greek Daedalus and the famous Leonardo da Vinci were so preternaturally gifted that they were rumored to be able to create wings that would allow one to fly or shoes that would allow one to walk on water. You might call that level of irreproducible aptitude, inexplicable and unseen since, a form of magic. Or, if you want real magic, there's always fantasy. If you look through a few books, it's probably not hard to find all manner of wizards creating magical talismans with spells, witches weaving hexes out of birch knots, all that. But I love how this is done in Circle of Magic. Yes, the mages in the book do have some kind of mystical power, but it's sort of in the background. Their magic doesn't shape the craft, it just influences how they interact with it. It gives them a way to interact more deeply, almost to engage empathetically with their materials, feel what the things they're working with are feeling. At one point, the main character, Sandry, gets frustrated because the wool fibers she's trying to prepare for spinning are sticking all over her body. It takes a lot of empathy to be firm enough with the way she pulls them off herself that they know she means business, but gentle enough not to scare them and keep them from weaving nicely together. That level of connection would certainly go a long way to improving the end result. Magic ability used for craft. What about when it's not an ability or skill, though? What if it's just the materials you put into the craft that make it magical? We definitely see plenty of that as well. Think of the wands in the Harry Potter books. Really just nicely carved sticks of wood, right? Except, at each wand's core, there's a magical component. Phoenix feather, unicorn hair, dragon heartstring, which turns the whole thing from a fancy pointing tool into a channel through which a magic user can direct their powers. Another example of this, which I love, comes from the Old Kingdom series by Garth Nix, which imagines a magical universe whose laws are in part governed by a sort of binding agreement made by the forces which created it. They call this the Charter. Mages in this world are able to glimpse pieces of it and manifest them as symbols called charter marks, which they can combine into logical arguments and instructions that can have complex effects on the physical world, almost like a programming language. Magical materials used in the craft. Out of all the possible magical materials one could craft with, though, I think ordinary things are by far the most interesting. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but that might also just come down to how you think of the world around you. Most of the modern world probably isn't very animistic, but the concept of a natural world inhabited by spirits and emotion and mystical qualities is older than time. I've read, for instance, that the ancient Incans believed materials like stone to be alive. They possessed a certain quality that the Incans called kame, which means something akin to essence. Many things in their world possessed this quality, which meant that they were fundamentally sacred. Many things, but not metal. Metal was liminal. It had to be worked and transformed into something sacred, which is interesting because I have another example of the exact same idea, except here metals basically become the most magical substance. In the book Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, metals are a substance with hidden magical properties. When a mage swallows and digests a metal, what they call burning the metal in the book, they unlock temporary powers connected to that metal. Burning pewter, for instance, might give someone supernatural strength, or burning tin might sharpen all of one's senses. You can even sort of see this in Circle of Magic. I mentioned the way Sandry dealt with the wool fibers clinging to her. There seems to be a degree of awareness or emotionality in the materials of that world that allows mages to use their power. After all, being empathetic toward a piece of string isn't going to do you much good if it can't feel anything, is it? So, supernatural beings making supernatural things. Magic used as a tool of creation. Magical materials that lend a craft magical properties. Mundane materials with magic secreted deep inside, if only you can access them. This is all really interesting, but it also assumes one thing: that the magic is already there, and that you can already access it. But what if we reverse that? What if instead we thought of crafting as the path to the magic? Not magic used for crafting, but magic that comes from crafting. This is where things start to get a little less familiar and a little more interesting. I think a good place to start with this idea is to recognize that sometimes the tools we attempt to use for interacting with magic aren't really very magical unto themselves. Think of something like a dowsing rod, which is just a stick one might use to magically divine hidden information, or a crystal ball, which, you know what a crystal ball is. It's something we see a lot in reality because, we don't exactly have phoenix feathers and dragon heartstrings here, do we? We kind of have to make do with what exists. These are fairly ordinary things crafted from fairly ordinary materials, but the end result is something just able to touch magic. Here's a good comparison. I mentioned the wands in Harry Potter earlier, how they have special components inside them that allow them to channel magic. Well, in Jim Butcher's book series, The Dresden Files, they have something similar, but much different. A wizard's staff in that setting can be made with magic, and it can have magical components, but those aren't really necessary. Generally, they're just carved from wood and etched with runes. They don't really have any supernatural properties unto themselves. They don't really do anything magical. They're what the wizards of that world call a foci, something to focus and direct magical energy. Really, a mundane object like a dowsing rod or a crystal ball used to interact with the supernatural. It's a pretty simple concept, and there are a lot of great directions to take it. A staff is cool, but also incredibly familiar, and I think we have a lot of room to get weird with this idea. Case in point, the magic system of Sigildry from Patrick Rothfuss's series, The Kingkiller Chronicle. In the books, there are certain laws which allow deeply held beliefs to cause real change in the world. Through Sigildry, you can engineer those beliefs into devices by inscribing the materials you're using with runes which sort of capture and convey the beliefs. Unlike the charter marks I mentioned earlier, which are inherently magical and descend from a nigh-divine source, nothing about the process or the materials or even the symbols used in Sigildry is inherently magical. But the end result of the craft is a product which can tap into magical laws and produce spectacular effects. Really, though, most often, it's used to make fuelless hand lamps or synchronized bells that ring whenever the other one does, regardless of the distance between them. Very practical stuff, which I can certainly appreciate. It's a nice break from gods forging magical weapons and all that. Actually, now that I think about it, this concept can get really practical, can't it? To the point of being almost devoid of magic, which is a weird direction to take a video about magic systems, but hear me out. Not all magic is tangible. The majority of what we call magic in the real world is just perceived, not a change in the fabric of reality, but a change in how we look at it. And crafting has a very unique power to affect that. It traps the essence of a moment, a place, a people, into the shape of an object or an art, makes those things concrete and portable. Vikings, for instance, were known to prize foreign-made Frankish swords for their superior metal and high-quality craftsmanship. Such well-made armaments were passed down through families and leaderships as a symbol of power and substance, giving the relics a sense of character and honor, much like a magical talisman. In that way, they become more than swords. Speaking of which, there's another even more visceral version of this idea in the legends surrounding the production of Damascus steel. Blades forged from it had beautiful ripples and banding throughout the metal and were fabled to hold an edge so sharp that it could split hairs or slice a steel gun barrel in half. They don't really hold up to modern techniques and materials, but back in the day they were worth more than their weight in silver. Unfortunately, the technique was closely guarded and, for a very long time, lost altogether. The mystery led to some pretty wild rumors, the most shocking of which is that the blade's curious flexibility, durability, and patterning came from the way that they were quenched while still red hot. Some said that instead of being dunked in water or oil, they were plunged into the body of a slave, cooled from hot, in blood. Brutal, but that also kind of sounds magical to me, the blade drawing its strength from a human body and all. Just another way that craft can change the way we see a material, elevate it to something beyond a mere product. Even simpler materials like stone and clay become sacred when built into structures like sepulchres, cairns, dolmens, ziggurats, pyramids, and temples. The craft changes not just the makeup of the thing, but its meaning. It's something we're all well aware of, but I think is very easy to write off when you're writing fantasy. Given a world whose laws you can change on a whim, sometimes it's easier just to literally change things, make them actual magic. Still, it does sort of naturally happen when you're world-building deep-time, diverse cultures. These aspects of human experience just sort of seep in. A really easy example of this, the legendary artifacts and weapons all over Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. There was a time when magic was more common in that setting, when gods and demigods walked the earth, and great craftspeople made wonders all the time. These things are still present in the current-day setting of the story, but they're greatly diminished. When they do show up, they seem to harken back to that bygone world. Swords like Sting and Glamdring, which burn with a cold light, are ancient elven weapons, storied and sought after. When we imagine Gandalf and Frodo wielding them, blades glowing blue, there's an air of especially mystical power that seems to accompany the sight, even in this fantasy setting. But in their original context, they were only a few of many. It's when they're removed from that original context and transplanted into the context of the story that they assume that great depth of apparent magic that they have. Again, the objects themselves don't change, but how we perceive them does. And even on top of all the spectacles in a story like Lord of the Rings, that is a special kind of magic. Mundane tools crafted to interact with magic, crafts that hold within them an entire context and appear different and almost magical to those outside of it. Both ways we can imagine magic emerging from craft. But what about the process itself? Not the product, not the materials. What about the act of crafting? Does that get to be magical as well? Do we ever see magic as crafting? Well, on occasion. It's surprisingly hard to find good examples of this. I find most crafting magic is really focused on the end result, or the starting place, or the skill of the craftsperson. But the one that really resonates for me is the Moirai, the weavers of fate from Greek myth. Unlike gods crafting divine weapons and wizards crafting tools for their practice, The magic of the fates comes directly from the art itself. Clotho, the spinner, spins the thread of life from her distaff onto her spindle, which gives all things their origin. Lachesis, the allotter, measures the length of thread given to each life with her measuring rod, bestowing mortality. Atropos, the inexorable, the inevitable, the unturning, cuts the measured threads, bringing an end to each life. Through this craft, they work a magic which governs the fate of all things, placing them even higher than the gods, at least in some versions of the myth anyway. It's even harder to find good examples of this in modern fiction. Spectacle tends to win out, and it's hard to find spectacle in hours of needlework or hundreds of hammer strokes on the same piece of metal. One book I really appreciate for giving the process such love is The Paper Magician by Charlie N. Holmberg. The mages in this setting are actually craftspeople who have become magically bound to a certain material and spend the rest of their lives working with it. The magic is there to begin with, yes, but it only works as well as one's ability to understand and execute the craft. Make it whole, and it will rise whole, says the master magician. This is one of the earliest lessons the protagonist has to learn as she tries to coax magic out of papercraft. When a mage bound to papercraft tells a snowflake to chill, if cut precisely right, it will. A paper fan will always move air, but if all the folds have been made perfectly even, it could put a thunderstorm to shame. To make a living thing out of paper, all the anatomy must be accounted for in the folds of the paper, or the thing won't live. And making a living thing that doesn't exist out of paper, like a griffin or a dragon, would be nigh impossible, because no craftsperson could match the perfection of nature and account for every nuance they would need to without an anatomical reference. The magic in this setting derives not so much from the product, but from the process, how intimately the mage understands their craft and how much care they give to execution. Although, even this example sort of slips into the territory of magic emerging from craft instead of magic as craft, right? Because although the execution matters more than the product, the magic still comes less from the experience of making the fold than it does from the technical quality of the fold once it's been made. And this is why I love Circle of Magic, why it made me want to put this entire video together. It may be the only book I've ever read where the motions of making and creating are themselves elevated to magic, instead of just their products or their execution. At one point, Sandry remarks on how, wherever she travels, she always watches the women as they spin thread. It always seems like magic to her. And her teacher tells her that it is magic. To take something tangled and faulty and spin it until it's smooth and strong, now there's work worth doing. And there's magic you can do with it, if you have the power. Which is exactly what all of the perspective characters in the book end up spending so much of the time trying to learn. It's a process not of perfecting technique, as in The Paper Magician, but of connecting to the work. The character who does smithing and metalcraft must learn to bring a forge fire to white hot using a bellows before she can reach into the flame. The one who grows and tends plants must learn to cultivate with restraint, lest the plants themselves become too ambitious and grow themselves to death. Before she can spin gusts and whirls from the wind, the one who crafts from nature's fury must first learn how her destructive emotions create themselves within her, just as the storm clouds create themselves in the sky. And most telling of all, Sandry, who spins thread, must feel the desire of the fibers to come together, allow the rhythm of the loom to find its way into her breath and heartbeat so she can weave together the threads of life and magic. And when she does create her first thread, although it is flawed, riddled with lumps and imperfections, she must treasure it, because all its imperfections have come from life and from the process of creating. And in the end, it's these very imperfections, the fragments of her learning and bonding with the craft, which cause some of the most incredible magic in the entire book. But I'll let you read the story to find out about that. In fiction, to make something magical is to elevate it. Fantasy can turn things we know and see all the time into things which give us pause, things which fill us with fresh wonder and curiosity. And through all these ideas, Magic for crafting, magic from crafting, magic as crafting. I can see crafting itself with fresh eyes. The skill of a craftsperson, the deep value hidden within even the simplest materials, the way that the process changes those materials into something different altogether, how the creator and their world become embedded in the things they create. These are all things I know already in the back of my mind, but they're things I take for granted. Seeing them this way sort of awakens me to those thoughts and feelings, which I love. But I think the most valuable part of this experience, at least for me, has been reimagining the action of creation itself. Sometimes it's easy to become infatuated with the end result of the work or the materials that go into it. It's easy to lose sight of how much beauty there is in the simple act of crafting, even if it means staring into the same needlework for hours, or striking the same piece of metal hundreds of times, or sitting at a keyboard, typing away until the sun goes down. I think it's obvious to all of us that the things we create have a certain magic in them inherently, and we can respect the value of the materials that create them. But the process is magical too. It should be magical. And we as creators should feel it, just like the characters in Circle of Magic do. You don't need to be a mage to do that, although it certainly couldn't hurt. Now, there's also an entire other side of this conversation that I sort of glossed over earlier. Gods craft lives, don't they? And they're not the only ones. There are so many interesting examples of life emerging from craft, or even life used as a material for crafting. It makes you wonder what the connection is between the two. So we went and made an entirely different video about it. Not a part 2, not an extension, a whole separate video about that topic. And you can watch it over on our creator-owned streaming platform, Nebula. Actually, there's a bunch of stuff over there we haven't released on YouTube, like this video about a fantasy world that basically has its own gigantic geographic genitalia, or this one about the morphology of angels and why artists always give them wings, even though they didn't really have them in the source material. You can find all our videos there a week earlier than they upload on YouTube, plus all these exclusive videos we only upload to Nebula. And we are not the only ones who've been posting there. The same is true for so many other amazing creators. YouTube is a kind of crazy place to make content. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to have this platform, but you have to be so careful about your topic choices, your packaging, what you include in your videos. You just start to feel like you're walking on eggshells. Nebula doesn't have any of those concerns. All of the videos there are high quality and trustworthy, which means there are next to no restrictions, which gives us a lot more freedom to do the things we really want to do, which is really nice because sometimes you just want to make the video you want to make without worrying about all that other stuff. And here's the really fun part, you can get Nebula for cheaper than almost any other streaming platform on the internet. Like less than $1.25 per month. That cheap. We want you to have access to our Nebula content, so we teamed up with another streaming platform called CuriosityStream, who will give you a whole year of Nebula for free when you sign up with them. So, basically, 2 streaming services for less than $1.25 a month. And I cannot say enough about how much I love CuriosityStream as its own platform. Quality documentaries are hard to find, but quality documentaries about the things I care about? Myths and monsters, literature, the madness of creative minds? Yes, this is where I want to be. CuriosityStream has documentaries about everything. I actually just finished this one about where creativity comes from called Unraveling the Creative Mind, which, as an artist myself, it's just really good to get a feel for how my own head sort of works. Definitely a worthwhile watch. So, here's how to access our other video about crafting-based magic systems, all of our other exclusive content, all of Nebula, and all of CuriosityStream for less than $1.25 per month. All you have to do is click the link in the description or go to curiositystream.com/TaleFoundry and sign up for 1 year using the code TaleFoundry. That's it. And that first year is only going to be $14.79, which again comes out to less than $1.25 per month. Frankly, I'm not quite sure how they can afford to do this for us, but I'm definitely not complaining. Seriously, take advantage of this offer while it's still going. I don't think any better one exists in the world of streaming. And once you've seen our other video on this topic, come back here and tell us what you think. We read almost every comment. You know, I honestly wasn't too sure about this topic. It seemed so ridiculously big, I didn't know how we would condense it all into one video. I mean, 2, technically, if you count the nebula one. But, in the end, I'm proud of this one. I really feel like I learned a lot working on it, especially about how I think of my own creativity. On that note, I'm gonna go make some magic of my own. Thanks for watching, and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next time. Bye!